This video may get me in some kind of trouble, but I think it's gonna be fun. Today, I thought it might be interesting and maybe embarrassing if live on camera, I went through some patient reviews of me as a dermatologist. I went on the popular physician review site ZocDoc and I typed in my own name. I found that I have 201 reviews overall, and these are all verified patients who have seen me during my practice here in New York as a dermatologist across the last roughly 18 months. Most of those 201 reviews are just star ratings without any comments afterwards, and so those aren't that much fun, but I will keep scrolling and I will stop whenever somebody's actually written something out. I will read it out loud for better or worse, and then I will give you any comments or thoughts that I might have. Now keep in mind that all of these reviews are entirely public, and these patients have chosen to leave these reviews online with their names underneath. But to be extra careful, because I know some people are going to talk about medical confidentiality and things like that, I'm actually going to blur out the names of anyone who's left reviews, and that way I have extra counsel protection. Now some of these might be brutal and some of them might be nice, but whatever they are, we're going to have them on screen and I'm just going to give you my thoughts. My name's Usama, and as I mentioned in the intro, I'm a dermatologist living and working in New York. I spend most of my time these days working in tech, but I still love to do videos every now and then about life as a dermatologist. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first here, you'll see that my overall rating is 4.83. Now, I feel like I'm probably gonna be a bit defensive here. I feel like I wanna point out that a 4.83 when it comes to ZocDoc, without meaning to brag, is probably up there with one of the highest when it comes to dermatologists in New York. Now, the only reason I say that is not just a brag. It's because depending on what kind of platform you're looking at, a 4.83 could either mean that you're a psychopath, like without meaning to offend Uber drivers. If I saw an Uber driver with a 4.83, I might be a bit like, okay, you know he's texting every now and then because he's got a few bad ratings. When it comes to healthcare providers, 4.83 is quite good. And if you think I'm just saying that for my own ego, feel free to check out on ZocDoc for yourselves. But broadly speaking, the numbers that make up these ratings, the two big things they ask people is for average wait time and also for bedside manner. Now, when it comes to average wait time, for dermatologists in particular, this one is pretty hard to keep high. And that's because when it comes to different medical specialties, we're probably the ones who have the most appointments on any one day compared to any other specialty. Now that's for a couple of reasons. Number one is because the problems patients come with are skin focused. And so usually you don't need to have as long of a history about multiple different systems. You can kind of look at the skin and know what most people have pretty quickly. And so the people who run dermatology groups know that, and they like to keep the appointment times nice and short because, frankly speaking, they make more money that way because they can see more patients. And number two, the other reasons why they try and pack in more appointments in one day is because in most parts of the country, there is such a huge demand for dermatology appointments that if we try to space out appointments more, some people would have to wait multiple months before they could see a dermatologist. So for example, in my practice, I can be scheduled a patient once every 10 minutes across my entire 10-hour day. And so if you do the maths there, I could be seeing 60 patients in one day. I personally have never seen 60. I've sometimes gone to like the low 50s. But if you think about it, that is a patient coming in scheduled every 10 minutes for an entire 10 hours in a row. And so you can imagine the second one patient has a few complex problems or requires a biopsy or starts to cry in the middle of the appointment and you have to spend some more time with them, that can knock you off by a few minutes. And then that domino effect can just keep going. And so it is very normal for dermatologists to sometimes run a bit late. And so personally, I am quite proud of the fact that my average wait time score is 4.72. It's pretty good going here. And bedside manner, I mean, 4.9. Come on. Okay, but truth be told, I probably deserve a lower bedside manner rating than that. I'm just lucky that I work in New York, but I have an English accent. And the people here love English accents. So I can get away with being much more brutal or a bit more blunt.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Idiot sandwich what?
An idiot sandwich, Chef Ramsay.
And people will still think I have a great bedside manner. So now let's get into the individual reviews. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to sort by, what should we do? Let's just do newest, that way I'm not being kind of biased. Okay, starting strong, Dr. Syed was personable, took his time to talk to you, to evaluate your needs. He was sincere and genuine with his recommendations. I'll definitely come back again. Fantastic, I look forward to seeing you back again. Keep scrolling, nice office, professional staff, 5 stars, 5 stars. Dr. Seed, Dr. S-E-E-D, gives one a sense of confidence, one is well taken care of. Friendly, funny, and kind as well. Well, what can I say? This Dr. Syed sounds absolutely wonderful. Okay, the next comment they make is office is a bit worn and bathroom not completely clean, which is odd for a medical environment. A masking requirement not followed by all patients and staff. Honestly, don't know what I can say about that. The office is usually pretty clean from what I can see. The bathroom, I mean, the patient bathroom is separate from the staff bathroom. So I think the patient who went in just before them may have left a little special surprise there, and I don't really know what we can do about that. Great experience. Dr. Syed is a craftsman. We'll be sending anyone who asks his way. A craftsman. I mean, you should see me with that cryotherapy canister. I can really paint up a canvas with that thing. Okay, let's go next one. As a healthcare professional myself, I appreciate a provider who is a good communicator as well as a good listener. Dr. Syed does a great job providing a patient-centered approach by explaining your options. He answered all of my questions and welcomed more questions throughout. Highly recommend. Well, that is very sweet. And it always means a lot to me when I see another healthcare professional and they enjoyed the appointment we had together. Okay, I'm gonna keep scrolling. I'll be honest, this is a bit boring because they're all quite positive, but naturally, I'm sure we're gonna hit some negative ones kind of soon. I didn't know this doctor from anywhere and was skeptical. I simply chose him based on reviews. Dr. Syed is fantastic. I would recommend to anyone in need of a top-notch dermatologist. Okay, here we go. So this is the first of the negative ones. I knew my time would come. So this was from 6 months ago. Not super personable or anything, but he gave me the information I needed and went through. Productive with the time we had together, but seemed rushed actually. Maybe overbooking patients, but overall, I'd go back simply for the ease of getting services that I was looking for. Okay, so not super personable or anything there, but it sounds like I kind of did my job. Not particularly sure what I did wrong there, but listen, as I mentioned before, we do have a lot of patients in one day. So if they picked up on the fact that, you know, it was a little bit busy in the clinic, I can't hold that against them. Okay, I just need a little sip of tea to recover from that. Not super personable or anything. You're not personable. Okay, I'm joking. I don't know who left that. Its initials hidden, so they may have been a lovely person. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll through another couple of good ones because they're getting a bit boring. Okay, 1-star review. February 2022. Never going back here. So disappointed. I really wish I knew a few more details about what caused that, but it's a bad experience there, so 1 star. Okay, I'm gonna keep scrolling some of the good ones. Exceptional, doctor was fantastic, so friendly, super knowledgeable. Come on guys, please. I'm gonna keep scrolling. Okay, here we go, 4-star review. Overall, okay experience, but I felt super rushed once I saw the derm, and the whole thing was about 3 minutes long. He kind of acted as though I didn't need to be there. Now, this is actually a pretty common problem, and I don't want to kind of pick out this patient in particular, but there are definitely times where patients come in and they may say something like, oh, I'm having dry skin on my arms, and it'll be like the winter time. And I'll say, oh, are you using any moisturizer on your arms? And they'll say, no, not really. And a part of me is thinking, okay, like you're not having a severe eczema breakout because I can see your skin. Maybe it looks a little bit dry, but nothing which I would see as concerning. So in my head, I'm a little bit like, okay, you're coming in with dry skin in the winter, which does happen, and you're not using moisturizer. So the chances are I'm gonna tell you to use moisturizer. And then after that point, you do find yourself thinking, oh, well, I can't just say that, can I? I mean, they came in for a whole appointment. Can I really just say this really obvious thing? And so you feel that pressure sometimes as a doctor in different specialties, including in dermatology, where you kind of have to like ad-lib and keep saying things to almost justify that they came in. Because I feel bad making someone think that they traveled all this way for something that, you know, they could have just found on the internet. And so I will end up just like talking extra and asking them even more questions, talking to them about general prevention, general good skincare routines, even if they haven't brought that up themselves, because I kind of want to be like, damn, I want this journey and this appointment to have been justified. But clearly in this patient's case, I didn't do a good job of that, and so maybe my bad. Great doctor, awful office staff follow-up. My prescription still has not been sent 5 hours later. Annoying automated text messages and long automated calling prompts to get to a live person. Seriously doubt I would use again. They are quick with taking your credit card though. Well, there you go. That's a silver lining. So clearly the office staff are very fast at that part of it, and the patient appreciated their efficiency when it came to payment processing at least. So props to them on that. Okay, but serious point. This is something which a lot of doctors sometimes have a problem with, where you may have done everything right kind of in your perspective, and this patient in this case even was nice enough to say, you know, great doctor to begin with, but I'll still get a 2-star rating. And so, you know, someone coming across and not reading the actual comments and looking at an overall rating, that can really affect different providers here. And sometimes I feel like it's a little bit unfair because you almost want to tease apart, you know, the doctor from what else may have happened. Now in this specific case, I don't know. I don't know whether it was, office culpability, where there was a problem with the prescription not being transmitted or something, because mistakes can absolutely happen. But in some cases, we'll do everything right on our end. Like, we will send a requisition form for blood work, or we will send a prescription through. And the pharmacy on their end might make a mistake and might not fulfill the prescription. But as far as the patient's concerned, that's on us, because, fair enough, they came to see us and they wanted their problem solved. And we tried our best to do what we could do, but something in between messes up on a technological level, or in getting a medication approved, or in getting the blood work sent effectively to us, or something like that. And the only place where a patient can kind of voice that frustration publicly is on the review of the doctor. And so, I'm here with a 2-star review based on something which I couldn't do much about. And so that is a bit of a frustration for a lot of doctors I know. Ooh, probably the best doc I've seen in years, because NYC is no joke in finding good care. That's very sweet. I just want to pause on that one. His office hours are great for working professionals. They don't leave when the clock strikes 5. That is true. We work into the evenings. I plan to go back. Okay, keep going. Okay, 4-star review here. Nice doctor, nice team, long wait. Fair enough. Doctor didn't take my insurance. Paid out of pocket, and the doctor spent about 10 minutes with me for a very expensive first visit. Felt very rushed and didn't get a chance to ask all of my questions. He was itching to leave as soon as he arrived. No close look at anything on my face I needed him to look at. No real care/attention. Didn't lay out all of my options. Just what he wanted to do. Okay. Walked away feeling like I would have been better off doing anything but going to this appointment. Office staff was nice. Oof, okay, so that one was very specifically targeted at me because the office staff was nice. So I can't pretend that was like an overall system thing. That was really personal to me. Now again, starting off with doctor didn't take my insurance. This, I'm sure, is super, super frustrating. Now, as a group, we try to get ahead of things like this. We're one of the more kind of permissive groups. We accept most insurances. And also online, you can kind of put in your insurance details and you should be able to see who does or doesn't accept it. So this was probably some kind of miscommunication between what they saw online and then what happened when they actually arrived. And so yeah, I can imagine that's annoying. And then paying out of pocket. Now again, that's one of those things where, like, when I walk into a room, I've usually got zero idea at all what's happened at the front desk, whether someone's paying out of pocket, whether someone's insurance is covering it. I thankfully have no idea about any of that, and I'm glad of that because I don't want that to impact how I treat a patient. So I probably had absolutely no idea that this patient has already entered that room kind of pissed off because they're paying money out of pocket to begin with. It turns out it's very expensive, because it can be if you are told to pay out of pocket rather than the insurance covering it. And so they've come in kind of already thinking, I've paid $300 for what is about to happen. And so I walk into that room having no idea about any of that.
Read the room, dude!
And I'm just kind of dealing with what I see in front of me and just being like, hey, oh, this is your problem. Here's what you should do for that. And the patient here mentions that, was very rushed, but spent about 10 minutes with me. Well, I mean, to be honest, a 10-minute kind of appointment time is about as good as you're going to get for most dermatologists, unfortunately. There are some dermatologists that offer really kind of boutique care where they do 30-minute or 60-minute appointments with people, but those dermatologists accept no insurances, and normally they will charge something like $500 to $1,000 for their appointment, because that's how they kind of make up the money of the fact that they're not doing a lot of appointments in that one stretch of time. But in a busy place like Manhattan, a 10-minute appointment is kind of par for the course. And so, I don't know if that is very rushed, but there are little things you can do that maybe makes the patient feel more rushed and which you want to avoid. So I make a rule of whenever I go into a patient room, I will always sit down. I'll never kind of stand up and talk to them. Otherwise, they just feel like they can't have a proper conversation. So I try and do these little things to make it not feel as rushed. But in this case, I think the patient was expecting kind of much longer of an appointment, and especially because they probably paid a few $100s out of pocket for it. I totally understand that. But I think this might be a case of kind of unrealistic expectations. He was itching to leave as soon as he arrived. I may have actually just been itchy. Okay, I shouldn't make fun of them. Maybe, I'm sure there are subconscious things that can happen for you as a doctor. Like if you're running late, you might come in and be like, oh, this is that thing. I already know what this is. Like, here's the treatment for it. And maybe patients can interpret that as kind of not listening and not taking things seriously. This is actually probably a good time to talk about this. Dermatology is one of the specialties where I know in medical school they always tell you that the history is super important and you really need to kind of listen to the golden 2-3 minutes and get the whole backstory and things like that. That is true in the vast majority of cases. The tough thing in dermatology is It's basically visual diagnostics in most cases. There are definitely some things where the history helps to play a part, but in a lot of cases, especially the most common conditions, I could truly walk into a room, you could not say a word, and just from me looking at your skin, my treatment plan is likely to be the same no matter what you say versus kind of me just looking at it by myself in 90 to 95% of cases. Now this might be kind of taboo to say, but it's just a reality. Like if I walk in and I can see you have psoriasis, my recommendations when it comes to treatment are going to be the same whether you tell me that this rash has been there for 6 months or 3 months or 2 years, or whether it gets a bit itchier at night, or whether it gets a bit itchier when you eat chocolate. All of those things like may be relevant in other medical specialties, but in dermatology, I know what psoriasis looks like, especially when it's classic in its presentation. And so sometimes it's tough to fight that urge what this patient said was, he didn't lay out all of my options, just what he wanted to do. And I think that can be tough because, sometimes patients come in wanting to be much more involved in the decision-making process. And as doctors, and myself in this case, obviously I made more of that mistake of being like, here are the evidence-based treatments of psoriasis. Here's what you need to do, step by step. For example, I don't know that they had psoriasis, but that's just an example. That's the end of all of the reviews that have text in them, thank God. But I do want to talk a little bit about this overall culture of reviews and how I feel about them as a physician. Now here's the thing, there is a natural reflex when there's a review system like this to just hate it, because you feel like no matter who the next person walking through the door is, they could be somebody that goes out and gives you a 1-star review and writes a really long scathing article about you, and that puts off future patients. But I think that's just life. Like if you asked Uber drivers, would they rather every kind of rider in their car not be prompted to give a star rating and to just everyone be equal? They'd probably say yes, because that review process adds pressure to your everyday work. But the thing is, when it comes to Uber, or when it comes to restaurants, or when it comes to hotels, I personally love seeing those reviews because that's how I decide where I want to go or who I want to use. And so I think it is a little bit hypocritical for a doctor like me if I were to say, oh, these review things are complete and they shouldn't exist, because I use them when it comes to somebody else, and just when the pressure and the scrutiny is put on me, suddenly I cry like, oh, this is so unfair. And so I think they do have a role to play, and overall I think they probably do a decent job at helping you to identify who is a nightmare of a doctor and who is probably quite good. Because what I will say is I have looked up different doctors who I think are terrible, and I'm not going to say their names, even though that would be a really fun video. I've looked at those doctors who I think are truly awful on ZocDoc to see, how much correlation is there between my opinion of someone being terrible and the general public giving them those reviews. And those doctors really do have lower reviews. They'll have like a 4.4 or a 4.3, and I'll think, oh wow, like that is fully justified from my experience with that person. But what I will say is that when it comes to the higher end, there are some doctors who I think are amazing and their reviews might be like 4.6. And then there are some doctors who I think are just, average, and their reviews might be, 4.8, 4.83. And so I don't think they're as good at identifying the truly best doctors necessarily, but I think they are good at identifying the nightmare one. But here is one issue that I really do have with a service like ZocDoc. In all of those other examples I gave, whether it's Uber or whether it's hotels or whether it's Yelp reviews when it comes to restaurants, the restaurant owners or the hotel owners have an ability to respond to people's comments and reviews. So you've probably seen this. There'll be someone who'll comment on a hotel saying, oh my God, 1 star, this was the worst, they stole money from me, and they locked me out of my hotel room. And you'll think, oh my God, what kind of a hotel is this place? And then you'll scroll down and you'll see that the hotel has written a response, and they'll say,
hey, Mr. Matthews, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, but the reality is that you tried to check into the hotel at 7 a.m. when we told you your check-in time was 3 p.m. And then we had to charge your card for the security deposit because you had a party and you smashed up the whole hotel room.
And then you'll kind of be like, oh, okay, so this person who left the review was basically an idiot. And it restores the faith that you may have lost in that hotel because they had that right of reply. And even when it comes to Uber, although the Uber driver can't actually kind of respond and contest all of their reviews, the passengers themselves are also given a rating. And so Uber drivers can know that, oh, this passenger is, historically a bad tipper, or this passenger is always late, or whatever else it is. There is some kind of two-way system where both the reviewer and the reviewee are able to give feedback on each other, and that makes it a little bit more fair. Now, when it comes to ZocDoc, we are not allowed to do that as physicians. So if a patient leaves a review saying, oh, this doctor is a crook, or, they gave me something that poisoned me, we might be really tempted to reply and say, hey, we're not crooks. You actually have an outstanding balance of $800 because you've refused to pay your copay for the last 10 visits. And oh, by the way, the reason you're saying I poisoned you is because I gave you an antibiotic to treat an infection. And so I think, if you had that right to reply, then when a doctor got a 1-star review from a patient that may have been unfair, if they could reply in some way and explain that, maybe it would be a little bit more fair of a system. But obviously we're not allowed to do that because of HIPAA issues. We're not allowed to disclose medical information in public. And so it can sometimes feel like you're a bit of a punching bag when it comes to being a physician online. So here's my feedback for the people at ZocDoc. You can't change medical confidentiality laws, but here's what you can do. When a patient sees me, who I know has come through ZocDoc, there shouldn't be an option to leave comments or any other kind of medical details, but there should be a way to leave a star rating where we can kind of give some feedback on the patient's overall bedside manner, for example, or their overall professionalism or something like that. Because we all know this as physicians, there are some patients who are a nightmare for their dermatologist and their rheumatologist and their primary care doctor and their pulmonologist, and we all know, oh my God, this patient is just toxic in that way, but the people online don't know that. So what would be helpful is when somebody leaves a review for you as a doctor where they say 1 star and they say XYZ in the comment section, if you can hover over their name and it shows you what that person's overall rating is from their physicians, I think that would give really useful information to the public. Because if someone is ranting and raving and you hover over them and their rating is 1.5 stars from all of their physicians, you know that this patient is a nightmare patient and that you should take their feedback with a pinch of salt. So that was my response to my ZocDoc reviews. If you found that interesting, or if you have any thoughts or questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.